In the center of the village, a modest clay house with a thatched roof stood quiet, almost like it waited for something to happen. Inside, a young girl of 18, Thandi, sat on a woven mat near the window, her hands busy with the small sewing project her guardian had given her the night before. Thandi had not always been alone in this house. Her parents had died when she was very young, leaving her in the care of Mr. Chuma, a widowed teacher known across the village for his gentle voice and quiet wisdom. He had taken her in not out of obligation but out of a deep sense of love and responsibility. From the moment he lifted her into his arms and promised to protect her, he became both her guardian and the only family she knew. Mr. Chuma had a presence that filled the house with calm and order. He taught her to read from worn books, to measure grains carefully in the market, and to speak politely to elders. He guided her with patience, never raising his voice but always insisting on respect and diligence. As the years passed, Thandi grew into a young woman. She remembered the days when she had clutched at his hand as they walked to the river to fetch water. She remembered how he had sewn patches on her torn clothes and dried her tears when other children laughed at her small shoes. He had become more than a guardian. He was the one who shaped her world. But now, sitting by the window with sunlight spilling across her lap, she realized something that startled her. The feelings she carried for him were no longer just gratitude or admiration. There was a pull, a desire she did not understand, and it frightened her. The village was small, and news traveled like wildfire. People noticed the closeness between Thandi and Mr. Chuma. Whispers began to spread in the market and under the shade of the old baobab tree where women gathered to pound maize. They spoke in hushed tones of the girl who had grown into a woman under a man's care. Some admired the devotion, others frowned, uncomfortable with the thought of a bond that went beyond the usual lines of guardianship. Thandi knew these murmurs existed, but she could not stop her heart from reacting whenever Mr. Chuma smiled or placed a hand on her shoulder. One evening, as the village prepared for the harvest festival, Mr. Chuma called Thandi to help him arrange decorations. The long shadows of the acacia trees stretched across the courtyard. She worked quietly, her mind a storm of confusion. He handed her a bundle of colorful fabric and paused, looking at her with eyes that seemed to see right through her. "Thandi, you are growing into a strong young woman," he said softly. His voice carried pride but also a hint of something unspoken. Thandi felt her stomach tighten. The words should have comforted her, but instead, they ignited a flutter she could not ignore. That night, sleep came reluctantly. She lay on her mat and replayed every moment of the day. The festival drums beat faintly in the distance. She thought of the market visits, the long walks, and the evenings by the fire when Mr. Chuma told her stories of his own youth. Every memory was steeped in care, and now in a confusing warmth that made her cheeks burn. She realized the feelings she had tried to deny were growing too strong to ignore. Her heart ached with longing, and at the same time, a heavy weight of guilt pressed down. What she felt was forbidden, yet it was as natural as breathing. Days passed, and the tension in her chest did not lessen. She began noticing the way Mr. Chuma looked at her too, noticing small things, like how his eyes lingered a little longer when she laughed, or how he brushed stray hairs from her face with a careful touch. She caught herself studying the lines of his face, the gentleness in his hands, and felt a confusing mix of comfort and desire. One afternoon, while fetching water at the river, she glimpsed him walking toward the village in the distance. His shadow stretched long across the sand, and for a moment, she wished the world would stop so she could just stare at him. But the reality of her own thoughts made her turn away, splashing water over her face to wash away the heat of embarrassment. The village, oblivious to the inner turmoil, continued its rhythm. Children chased chickens along the dirt paths. Women chattered and pounded grain. Men returned from the fields tired but laughing. Yet, for Thandi and Mr. Chuma, each shared glance now carried weight. A simple conversation about chores or a school lesson became a delicate dance. They were aware of the unspoken, each unsure how to navigate it. And while the outside world saw a devoted guardian and a grateful daughter, inside, a storm brewed. Then, one evening, after the festival's last dance had faded and the village lay quiet, Mr. Chuma summoned Thandi to the veranda. The moonlight painted the courtyard silver. He was holding a small bundle of firewood, but he did not look at it. His eyes were fixed on her with a seriousness that made her heart pound. "Thandi, we must speak," he said. The sound of his voice was calm but firm. She stepped closer, her hands trembling. She could feel that a turning point had come. The air was heavy with expectation. Her mind raced with questions and fears. The truth they could no longer avoid was about to surface. He took a deep breath and said something that stopped her heart. "I have watched you grow into a woman, Thandi, and I will not lie. There is a part of me that feels more than a guardian should. I do not know if it is right, but it is real." Her breath caught. Her cheeks burned. She had felt it too, the pull she could not name. But hearing it spoken aloud made it unbearable and thrilling all at once. "I cannot say how the village will take this," he continued, "and I do not want to hurt you. But I cannot pretend my feelings are not there." Thandi's mind reeled. She felt fear, desire, and guilt all in a single heartbeat. The world she knew, the life she had built with him, hung in a fragile balance. The veranda felt smaller, the night heavier, and the distant hoot of an owl punctuated the moment. She wanted to speak but could not find words. The air between them was thick with tension, and the next action, the next word could change everything. And then, without warning, a shadow moved beyond the fence. The rustling of dry leaves drew their attention. A figure from the village, someone they both knew, had been watching them. Their private moment had been seen. The consequences of this intrusion loomed large. The silence was deafening. The shadow beyond the fence lingered a moment longer before disappearing into the darkness. Thandi and Mr. Chuma exchanged a glance, a mixture of shock and dread passing silently between them. The quiet of the night had shifted into something uneasy. The walls of the veranda suddenly felt confining, as if the air itself carried the weight of judgment. Thandi's hands shook, her pulse racing. Mr. Chuma, usually composed, looked uncharacteristically tense. For the first time, the safety of their private world had been shattered. The next morning, the village woke to the scent of burning firewood and the faint hum of early chores. But the whispers had begun. Mrs. Nlavu, who sold vegetables at the market, had seen them the previous night. She could not hold her tongue, and by midday, the story had spread across the village like wildfire. People spoke in cautious tones near the river, under the shade of baobab trees, and along the paths leading to the fields. Questions hung in the air, loaded with suspicion. The delicate image of Mr. Chuma as the devoted teacher and Thandi as the innocent ward was now cracked. Thandi felt the sting of every glance. Women avoided her gaze or smiled with pity, and men lowered their voices when she walked past. Even children stared, sensing the tension between adults. She wanted to disappear, to hide inside the small house that had always been a sanctuary. Yet, she could not run from the feelings she harbored. The longing, the warmth that bloomed in her chest whenever Mr. Chuma was near, persisted like a stubborn ember. Mr. Chuma, aware of the shifting winds of gossip, tried to act with calm and reason. He continued teaching and tending to his small garden, speaking to villagers with the usual patience. Yet, Thandi noticed the way he avoided prolonged eye contact, how he paused longer before entering her room, and the faint lines of worry on his forehead. Their lives had become a careful dance, navigating the edges of propriety and private desire. One afternoon, Thandi was sent to fetch water from the river. The path was long and lined with wild flowers that brushed against her legs. She walked slowly, thinking about the past years she had spent with Mr. Chuma. She remembered the lessons he had taught her, not just of reading or arithmetic, but of dignity, courage, and kindness. And now those lessons felt intertwined with a more complicated reality. She arrived at the river and bent to fill her clay pot, but a movement in the water's reflection caught her eye. There he was, standing across the shallow riverbank, watching her silently. His presence was both comforting and terrifying. "Thandi," he said, stepping closer, his voice low so that only she could hear. "We cannot pretend the village will not notice. We must be careful, but I cannot ignore what I feel for you." She looked up at him, her heart caught in a storm of fear and desire. "I feel it too," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I do not know what to do." He reached out and took her hand gently, not forcing but offering. "Then we must decide together," he said. "We cannot let fear dictate our hearts, but we must be wise." The tension of secrecy pressed down on them, and yet in that moment, the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them. The river rippled around their feet, carrying away the ordinary worries of the day, leaving only the fragile possibility of something forbidden and beautiful. Back in the village, the gossip only grew more persistent. Families whispered about propriety, and elders debated whether intervention was necessary. Some young men watched with envy, and women whispered cautions to their daughters about the dangers of such entanglements. Thandi heard fragments of these conversations while walking past the market stalls. Each word felt like a nail in her chest, a reminder that love and desire could be a perilous path when weighed against the judgment of the community. Days passed with careful routines. Mr. Chuma and Thandi continued their daily chores, sharing glances and small, meaningful gestures. She began noticing him in new ways: the way he hummed while cooking, the gentle tilt of his head as he listened, the quiet strength in his hands. The village's watchful eyes made every interaction a small rebellion, and that secrecy made their connection more intense. Then one evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with shades of orange and purple, Thandi overheard a group of villagers near the well. They were planning to confront Mr. Chuma, accusing him of inappropriate behavior and threatening to take the matter to the local council. Panic surged through her. She ran home, her heart hammering, and found him sitting quietly in the veranda, reading a worn book. She could not hide the fear in her eyes. "They know," she said, breathless. "They will come for you." He set the book aside and reached for her hands. "We knew this risk existed," he said calmly, "but there is a way through this. We must act with honesty and strength. If we deny who we are, we will only suffer more." Thandi looked into his eyes and saw the same storm of emotion reflected there: love, fear, and defiance. That night, the village council gathered. Elders, heads bowed and hands folded, listened to accusations and whispered rumors. Mr. Chuma stood quietly, dignified, while Thandi remained behind him, hidden by the doorway. The council debated, some angry, some confused, and some quietly sympathetic. The air was thick with tension. When the meeting adjourned, a single elder approached the house. His voice was firm but not cruel. "Decide wisely. Your actions affect not just yourselves, but the entire village." Thandi's chest tightened. The words were a warning, but also a reminder of the responsibility that came with choice. That night, under a sky filled with stars, she and Mr. Chuma sat on the veranda. Words failed them, and yet silence spoke volumes. The weight of the village's expectations pressed against their shoulders, but their hearts beat in quiet rebellion against it. They both knew that the next step would change everything. And just as they leaned toward each other, thinking perhaps that the world had momentarily softened its scrutiny, a sudden shout pierced the night. Someone had set fire to a stack of thatched hay near the edge of the village. The flames licked the sky, sending sparks into the darkness, and the villagers began to run, calling out warnings and alarmed cries. The fire spread quickly, the dry thatched hay crackling and sending sparks into the night. Villagers ran with buckets of water, shouting to each other over the roar of the flames. Thandi grabbed a small pail and ran alongside Mr. Chuma, their movements almost instinctive. The smell of smoke filled the air, stinging her eyes, and the heat made her skin prickle. For a moment, everything else — gossip, desire, fear of judgment — faded into the background. There was only action, urgency, and the fight against the consuming blaze. As they worked to douse the flames, Thandi noticed the faces of her neighbors contorted with panic and fear. Even the most judgmental elders had joined in, hauling water and shouting instructions. In that moment, she realized that despite rumors and whispers, the village was a collective body. When danger came, personal grievances were set aside. Mr. Chuma moved with steady precision, directing people, moving swiftly from one corner of the fire to another. His calmness gave her courage, and she felt pride swell in her chest. She had always admired him, but now admiration intertwined with a deeper, more complicated longing. Hours passed, and the fire was finally brought under control. Only a charred patch of the storage yard remained, but no one was seriously hurt. Villagers huddled together, exhausted and shaken, but alive. The crisis had forced a temporary truce with gossip. The village seemed to breathe again, yet an unspoken tension lingered in the quiet aftermath. Thandi and Mr. Chuma returned home, their clothes damp and streaked with soot. Inside their small house, they sat silently. Neither spoke immediately. Thandi's mind was a whirlwind. She could still feel the heat from the fire and the way their hands had brushed as they passed buckets back and forth. She realized how much she had relied on his presence, not just as a guardian, but as the anchor of her life. Mr. Chuma looked at her, his face tired but composed, and in his eyes she saw the same conflicting emotions she felt: responsibility, desire, and fear. "Thandi," he said finally, his voice low, tonight showed me something important. We are part of this village. Our choices affect more than just ourselves. Yet we cannot ignore who we are." She nodded, her throat tight. She knew he was right. The pull between them could not be denied, but the weight of communal expectation pressed down hard. In the following days, life in the village tried to return to normal, but the fire had left traces. Conversations carried a hint of fear, a subtle respect for the danger that had come so close. And whispers about Thandi and Mr. Chuma persisted, softened but not erased. They moved carefully through the village, performing daily tasks, exchanging glances filled with quiet longing. The tension was almost tangible, a thread stretching taut between them, threatening to snap with the slightest misstep. Then one afternoon, Mr. Chuma invited Thandi to the river for a private conversation. The river, cool and flowing steadily, seemed like a small escape from the world. He took her hand gently, their fingers intertwining naturally as if it were the most ordinary thing. "Thandi," he said, "we cannot live in hiding forever. The village may never fully understand, but we owe it to ourselves to be honest. There is a path forward, but it requires courage." Thandi's heart raced. Courage meant stepping into the unknown, risking judgment, and perhaps even rejection. Yet the thought of continuing to live in secret, pretending her feelings did not exist, felt unbearable. "I am ready," she whispered, though fear clung to her like a shadow. "I do not know how, but I cannot deny what I feel." The next challenge came quickly. The village council summoned Mr. Chuma and Thandi again. The elders were stern, their faces lined with years of responsibility and caution. Rumors had reached the council more loudly this time, and the need for public clarification was urgent. Thandi felt a surge of panic as they approached the meeting place. The villagers' eyes followed them, full of curiosity, suspicion, and judgment. Inside the council space, Mr. Chuma stood tall and quiet. Thandi followed, her hands trembling slightly. The elders began speaking, their words measured but firm. "It has come to our attention that a relationship exists that may be considered improper by tradition. The village demands clarity." Murmurs rippled through the room. Thandi swallowed hard, her gaze fixed on Mr. Chuma. His eyes, calm and steady, met hers and gave her courage. He spoke first, his voice strong. "I have been Thandi's guardian since her parents passed. I have always sought to protect and guide her. As she has grown, feelings have developed between us that we cannot deny. We understand the concerns of the village. We ask for understanding, though we know it may not come easily." A tense silence followed. The elders conferred quietly, debating between tradition and compassion. Thandi's heart pounded. Every fiber of her being wanted approval, but she knew the odds were slim. One elder, old and wise, finally spoke. "This is not a decision lightly made. You have both acted with care and responsibility. Yet the heart is not bound by law. We will allow your choice, but the village will watch, and your actions must honor the community as well as yourselves." Relief surged through Thandi. She exhaled slowly, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease. The path forward was uncertain, but at least the first obstacle had been met. Outside, villagers whispered and stared, but now curiosity mingled with cautious acceptance. In the weeks that followed, Thandi and Mr. Chuma navigated this delicate new reality. They continued daily routines, working side by side, sharing quiet moments and stolen smiles. Life in the village continued, but the air carried a subtle shift. People began to see their bond as something complicated but not destructive. The whispers grew softer, and some even offered quiet support. And then, one afternoon, as Thandi gathered water from the river, a young boy ran toward her, breathless and pale. "Thandi," he gasped, "someone has left a bundle at the edge of the village. It has your name on it." Her heart raced as she followed him, Mr. Chuma close behind. When they reached the spot, she saw a small, wrapped package tied with bright cloth. Her hands trembled as she untied it. Inside lay a bundle of letters, all addressed to her, written in a careful hand. The top one read simply, "For Thandi. Read and know the truth of what I feel." She looked up at Mr. Chuma, fear and curiosity mirrored in his eyes. The letters were from someone they both knew in the village, someone who had silently supported them, someone whose words would change everything they thought they understood about loyalty, love, and community. Thandi held the letters carefully, her fingers trembling. The bundle seemed heavier than it was, loaded with expectation and the promise of revelations. Mr. Chuma leaned close, his presence grounding her. his hand brushing hers briefly. They exchanged a glance, silent agreement passing between them. They would read the letters together. Slowly, she untied the first envelope and unfolded the paper. The handwriting was familiar, gentle, and deliberate. Each word carried a weight of thought and emotion, words meant to guide, to warn, and to encourage. The letters revealed a perspective neither Thandi nor Mr. Chuma had considered. A respected elder in the village, one who had always observed quietly from the shadows, had known of their bond for years. The letters spoke of understanding, of the deep responsibility Mr. Chuma had carried in raising Thandi, and of the complicated, natural evolution of feelings that had grown between them. They urged caution, yes, but they also encouraged honesty and courage. The elder wrote of the strength in facing judgment with dignity and reminded them that the heart often followed paths the mind feared to tread. Thandi's eyes filled with tears. The letters gave her a strange relief, a quiet permission to acknowledge her feelings without shame. Mr. Chuma's hand closed over hers, firm and reassuring. "We are not alone," he whispered. "Even in this village, someone sees us with fairness. That gives us strength," she nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. For the first time, the impossible seemed slightly possible. The next days were delicate. Thandi and Mr. Chuma moved carefully through the village, aware of eyes following them but bolstered by the knowledge that some silently supported them. The gossip had not vanished, but it softened. People still spoke in hushed tones, but now curiosity was paired with a growing respect for their integrity. They continued tending the garden, teaching children, and participating in community gatherings. Each act was measured, deliberate, and infused with care. And then one morning, a challenge arose that neither had anticipated. A young man from a neighboring village, hearing the rumors and misunderstandings, arrived at Maramuka with questions and accusations. He demanded to speak to Mr. Chuma in front of the villagers, asserting that such a relationship would bring shame upon the community. His voice carried across the clay courtyard, firm and aggressive. Villagers gathered, sensing the tension rising once again. Thandi's heart pounded, but Mr. Chuma remained calm. He listened to the young man's accusations, his face composed, and then spoke in measured tones. "I have cared for Thandi since she was a child. My guidance, my protection has never wavered," he said. "We acknowledge the feelings that have grown between us. They are real, but they are accompanied by respect, responsibility, and honesty. I ask that you look at our actions, not your assumptions. Our intentions honor both ourselves and this village." The young man hesitated, uncertain in the face of Mr. Chuma's quiet strength. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Some nodded, others looked conflicted, but no one stepped forward aggressively. Thandi felt a mixture of relief and pride. Her heart surged as she realized that the strength she admired in him was not just for her, but for the community as well. Weeks passed, and the village began to accept the delicate reality of their relationship. Thandi and Mr. Chuma moved forward together, though cautiously. They attended ceremonies, helped with harvests, and engaged in daily life, always conscious of appearances but quietly nurturing the bond that had grown naturally between them. The letters, hidden now beneath a mat in their home, served as a quiet reminder of support, guidance, and courage. And then, one afternoon, as Thandi walked through the fields carrying freshly harvested vegetables, Mr. Chuma appeared beside her. He had a serious expression, but his eyes held warmth. "Thandi," he said, "there is one more thing we must do before the village fully accepts us. We must declare our intentions, not just in whispers, but openly." She looked at him, the sun casting long shadows across the soil. Her heart raced. She knew what he meant. To claim love in a community bound by tradition was an act of bravery. It was a step that could invite judgment, but also a chance for recognition and acceptance. She nodded, fear and determination mingling in her chest. That evening, the village gathered at the central courtyard. Torches lit the square, casting flickering light on faces filled with curiosity and anticipation. Thandi and Mr. Chuma stepped forward together. The crowd hushed, the weight of expectation pressing on them both. Thandi's hands were steady, resting lightly on Mr. Chuma's arm. "We have lived here for years," Mr. Chuma began, his voice strong and unwavering. "I have guided Thandi, cared for her, and loved her as a guardian. Over time, our feelings have grown in ways we cannot deny. We ask for your understanding, and we promise to live our lives with respect for this village, its traditions, and its people." A pause. The silence was heavy. Then murmurs began. Some elders nodded, some smiled quietly, and gradually the tension broke. The villagers, seeing their honesty and dignity, began to offer cautious blessings. The couple's courage had shifted the perception. Acceptance was not universal, but it was enough to allow them a life together, free of secrecy. In the weeks that followed, Thandi and Mr. Chuma worked to build a home filled with warmth and love. The village, slowly adjusting to their unconventional union, began to treat them with a mix of respect and curiosity. Thandi continued helping with chores, teaching younger children, and tending the garden alongside him. Their bond grew, tempered by shared history, responsibility, and the trials they had faced together. And late at night, when the village was quiet and the stars hung low over Marmuka, they would sit on the veranda, holding hands and speaking softly. The past, the gossip, and the hardships had shaped them, but it had not broken them. They had chosen each other with courage, navigating desire, morality, and communal expectation. And in that choice, they had discovered the strength of love that could survive scrutiny, judgment, and time. One night, as they sat watching the fireflies dance above the fields, a sudden rustling came from the edge of the property. Both turned sharply, hearts beating. A figure emerged from the shadows, a child from the village, holding a small bundle of fresh flowers and a note. The note read simply, "Love that is brave inspires others." Thandi and Mr. Chuma looked at each other, understanding that their story was no longer just theirs. Their courage had become a quiet example for the entire village, and perhaps for generations to come. The night grew still. Fireflies glimmered like tiny stars among the grasses. Thandi rested her head on Mr. Chuma's shoulder. The world outside continued, with all its expectations, gossip, and traditions. But in that moment, nothing mattered except the quiet affirmation that love, tempered with respect and courage, could survive even the harshest judgment. And as the moon rose high over Marmuka, the village slept, unaware of the small revolution of hearts that had quietly transformed the center of their community. Thandi and Mr. Chuma remained on the veranda, holding each other, knowing that the path they had chosen was difficult, but it was theirs, and for the first time, they felt truly free.